Welcome back. As I said again, I'm Ryan Vanveen here with my special guest, John Bartlett. We're going in now to the section you've all been waiting for, the section on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Just coming to re-elaborate the last game they had, a must-win game for them. As a matter of fact, I must insist, all games from this point on for the Toronto Maple Leafs and teams like them are must-win. We're down into the last 2 or 3 weeks of the regular season. It's crunch time. You've called up all your good people. This is the push. And so the last game they had against the Buffalo Sabres, who I must mention, we were all saddened and touched by the tragic loss of Rick Martin of the fabled French Connection line with René Robert and Gilbert Perreault. A great loss for the team. And you really had to think going into that game, the Buffalo Sabres were going to have all the momentum on their side, as they did in the last game where they won 6-4. But the Maple Leafs really turned it on that night. Reimer was again incredible in net. He saved 39 of 42 shots on goal. You had MacArthur and Bozak scoring early and clutch defense all game. A few mistakes here and there which the Leafs cannot afford to make, especially in their upcoming game. But then you have people like Grabowski and Phil Kessel, who has been one of the league's best players since being picked last in the All-Star game. That was really the turning point for him. So now the Leafs are 70 points. Have 70 points. They're 6 games back currently behind New York. There's 13 games left in the season. In your professional opinion, do these guys still have the chance to be the Cinderella team?
There's always a chance. Until you're mathematically out, there's always a chance. The toughest part you have in these scenarios is when you don't always control your own destiny. And you're kind of hoping that other teams are going to lose or another team's going to win. And in this day and age of the 3-point game, it's so tough, you know. And when the teams in front of you end up going to overtime every night, you're like, oh, not again. Here we go.
With example of the Buffalo game.
Exactly.
Against, you knew going into that game that, especially with the tragedy of Rick Martin, you knew there was no way Buffalo was going to lose that game. The momentum they had was just boom, boom, boom. Like, it was incredible the way they played
so
that
you've got to deal with that. But, you know, I mean, the reality is right now all the Leafs can do is take care of their own business. So they've got to go out and try and get as many wins and points as they can and hope for the best. But, that's always the tough part about it. So is there a chance? Absolutely, because they're still in it. And that was a huge win on Saturday. They've given up a few points over the last few games where they've gone to overtime, the one in Atlanta there, and, you know, in the shootout with Pittsburgh and stuff like that. Those are those extra points that you'd really love to have back. The Islanders game in overtime as well. But it's in the past. You can't worry about that now. You've just got to worry about the games you have left and the points you can still get. So, yeah, I mean, as I said, until you're mathematically out of it, then there's still a crack. And we're talking here, and it's nice to be talking like this, you know,
this
at the time, this late in the year. There's a bit of a hill to climb, but we're not talking that we're waiting any day for that magic, you know, the mathematical number to happen. It's not like they're 12 points out going, well, they're still, but, you know, I mean, 1 point tonight, and they're down. We're not at that point that we've seen before. They are still in the fight here, so it's been fun to be in at this late.
Speaking of looking ahead to the future, tonight, the Maple Leafs are facing the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the big question on everybody's mind is, can James Reimer stop the two big guns in Tampa Bay? Steve Stamkos, incredible year. If Crosby hadn't gotten hurt, he would be winning the Art Ross Trophy this year, and we're all hoping he gets back at least next year. But this year, it's money on that Steve Stamkos is going to have the strongest chance of winning the Art Ross Trophy. He's got 84 points right now, and then right behind him is his teammate, Martin St. Louis, who's playing out of his mind this year, playing with the young gun Stamkos. He has 81 points. Do the Leafs have a chance against this team? They're 5th place in the Eastern Conference. Do we have a shot tonight?
Absolutely. I mean, when you have good goaltending, you can win any game, and James Reimer's been outstanding. You know, when you look at all the games that he's sort of kept either the Leafs right in or even won for them. So, and that's all it takes. It's a big save here and there. And when your goaltender's playing as well as he is, it gives the team confidence up front. And it's a mindset sometimes when you know that goaltender's going to make that stop for you. You're inclined to maybe take that extra chance or not think about what's going on behind you so much and be tentative. So, the Leafs know they need the win tonight. I hope they come out with a sort of that sense of urgency and intensity off the opening face-off, as opposed to maybe trying to play a little comeback hockey in the third, which is so dangerous for them. But absolutely, they have a chance. And Reimer, the way he's been playing, it's been outstanding, and that's just the kind of goaltender he is anyway. So he has that ability to win you games.
As we've said before, the Leafs goaltending, I'm so happy that Brian Burke decided the best decision he made, one of the best decisions he's made since he's come to the Leafs, build from the goal out. So you have guys like Jussi Rynäs, you have guys like Jonas Gustafsson, you have James Reimer, you have a core set of guys where you could say, okay, we have people that can stop the puck. Now we just build from the defense out, which is why he brought in Dion Phaneuf. Now, with these last couple of games, I don't know if there's been any deadline set, but who can the Leafs call up if they have a chance from the Marlies that would really be an asset to them right now?
Well, yeah, the problem right now is the injuries right through the organization. There's not many healthy bodies, and you also have a situation when you get past the trade deadline. A week later in the AHL, you have what's called the clear day roster, which in this case the Marlies had to name 2 goalies and 20 skaters that are their eligible players for the remainder of the regular season and the Calder Cup playoffs. So once you get into all this scenario, the Leafs only have 4 recalls they can use unless it's an emergency situation. Now, Keith Ollie, because he was put on the clear day roster, was sent down on trade deadline day and recalled on paper so he could be put on the clear day roster, so you've already burned 1. So the Leafs can only recall 3 other players this year for the recalls unless it's an emergency situation. So that plays into a bit of a factor if you want to try to bring somebody up and have a look. The problem or maybe not the problem, this is a good thing, but the Leafs right now are in a situation where they're trying to win every game and get every point, and the lineup that they have right now has been doing it for them. So I don't think they're in an experimenting stage where it's like, well, let's bring in a young guy and see what he can do. Now, right now, you want your horses that have been taking you down the stretch here to try and get you to the finish line and get you into the playoffs. So you've got to run with them and stay healthy, of course, is the other big part about all that. So, as for who might come up, well, if there was a need that arose or an opportunity to have a look at a few players, Joe Colborne, since he's come over in that trade for Thomas Caberlet, has been outstanding, although he got knocked out by a blindside hit in Rochester Friday night, so you won't see him. Christian Hansen's been out for a bit. Nazem Kadri has been on a roll as of late. He's got 3 goals in his last 3 games after snapping a 6-game goal streak. So, but I think they've already sort of had to look at him, and the way things are going with Kadri right now, I would be content to just leave him because he's coming along well. He's developing well, he's learning the pro game well, and he's getting a good sense of confidence in his game right now at the American League level. And I don't know if I'd want to tinker with that unless you're doing it sort of as a reward scenario for the way he's been playing. But he's really sort of in the last couple of weeks brought his game to another level, which we've been waiting to see, and it's there. So let that ball keep rolling. You don't want to disturb that. Maybe in a 4th-line center situation, yeah, Mike Zigomanis might be brought up, take some face-offs or whatever. But right now, I don't see the Leafs, unless they have to, bringing anybody up because they're not really in a predicament where they can, try to get some new blood in the lineup.
Speaking of new blood, it's funny you should mention that because one of the biggest parts of the Leafs season has been, even long before the trade deadline, Brian Burke was making moves that no one could believe he would make at this stage. And you've already mentioned one, Joe Colborne. Let me just read off a few of them to you that I think was incredible, all that they were able to get. First off was the Francois Beauchemin trade to Anaheim for Jeffrey Lupul, Jake Gardner, and a conditional 2013 4th-rounder. You sent Versteeg, who was sort of struggling at that time, to Philadelphia for first and 3rd-round pick. You had a Caberlet to Boston, which was the big one, for Joe Colborne, the 1st-round pick for Boston in 2011, and the conditional 2nd-round pick for next year's draft. And we sent John Mitchell to New York for the 7th-round pick in next year's draft. And then we traded our 7th-round pick to Anaheim for prospect Aaron Voros. So you look at 4 players out, 4 players in, 1 draft pick that we've given up with regards to 5 draft picks coming in, including 2 in the 1st round this year, after the Leafs have spent years giving up their 1st-round picks to try and land the big free agent that Brian Burke tried so hard to do. This is a team that's really going to be on the rise if they keep making moves like this, because they've built from the ground up, as all Toronto teams have really been doing recently. They've brought in young talent. They've brought in veterans that can teach these young talent and mature them faster. This is a team on the rise.
Well, and that's what you have to do nowadays. I think you have to build through the draft, and with the move that they made for Phil Kessel, that sort of depleted the picks a little bit. Now, when Brian Burke made that move for Phil Kessel, it looked like it was going to be an outstanding move at the time. You still had Victor Stahlberg in the system. Tyler Bozak was just signed as well. So I don't think at the time when everyone looked at the deal and thought, okay, wow, that's a heavy price to pay, but this might be a really good way it's going to work out with players that came in. And well, unfortunately, with injuries and everything else, the way it worked out, it hasn't panned out exactly how they wanted. However, now that you're able to go and get those picks back, then you're starting to rebuild the cupboard again, and all the moves that he's made to sort of go with the youth and bring in a couple of younger bodies, and now you're going to be able to continue to build like that and build the farm system as well, because that's a big key when you're trying to build a long-term successful franchise, you've got to have that support below. So, but yeah, I mean, you look at Colburn's been a great player in for Caberlet, and you get somebody like Jake Gardner, who we may or may not see if he decides to leave college at the end of the year with the Marlies. Another great young pickup.
Fantastic. Well, you gotta like everything that this Leafs team has done, and we can't wait, especially with guys like Kadri coming into the mix. So we're going to be watching them intently to see what the future holds for them. And there's really not anything more you could say about this team other than watch out, because if you keep this team on the direction it's going, good things will happen. Maybe not the Stanley Cup in a couple of years, but definitely something big. Stick around.